Hello everyone, welcome to Naomi's Bookshelf. Welcome to my favorites of 2023. Now, I read I think 250 books in 2023, and honestly, there's no way I can pick a top 10. So what I figured I'd do this year, I'll probably do it next year because it seemed a lot easier when it came to picking, was to pick my favorite of each month. Now, not all of these are, these aren't all of my favorite books of the year, all of my 5 stars, whatever, but these are the favorite of each month. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a hint into how my reading was. I mean, some months were worse than others, but some months were definitely incredible for reading amount. So yeah, I'm just gonna get into my favorite for January and we'll work our way through the year. The first one was I'm Not Charlotte Lucas by Kasey Stockton. This actually was my first book of the year and I loved it so much. It was incredible. So yeah, this one was quite a different one than I expected. I've had a lot of trouble with Jane Austen retellings, to be perfectly honest. And this one, I expected it to be a lot more cringy. This was not cringy at all. It was kind of cheesy, but I loved the cheesiness element. I loved how it mirrored Pride and Prejudice so much, while also having a life of its own. I really, really enjoyed this. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's definitely mine, and I can't wait to reread it again and again and again. For February, another arc happened to be my favorite of that month, which that one was Daughter of Eden by Jill Eileen Smith. That one is about Eve, and it was just so interesting. I've never thought about Adam and Eve after they left the garden and how things would have played out for them. It was really interesting to see that as it followed all through their lives with their children, the different events that happen in early Genesis. So I really loved that one. It was a really great one. A close second was The Maid of Ballymacool, which I was tempted to put both in here, but that one is a very close second. And it was just that close that I have to mention it. For March, it was Lady Susan by Jane Austen. It was a reread, but it was my favorite book of the whole month. There were some other 5 stars, but Jane Austen wins out almost every time. I thoroughly loved this one, thoroughly loved my reading experience, and I just loved tabbing it all up and holding Lady Susan near and dear to my heart. It is seriously my favorite Jane Austen work, completely and utterly. Better than all of her novels, in my opinion. I thoroughly love it, and I hope more people will check it out eventually because it's really a gem that most people who aren't Janeites don't know about. April brought us nonfiction, which was The 16th Century in 100 Women by Amy Licence. This one was exactly what the title says. It's about 100 women in that year span, or it's 200-year span technically, I guess. But it covered women like portraits, like the girl with the pearl earring, I think, was in there. It covered women who were queens, who were common people, who were ladies. It covered so many different aspects of the 16th century that I loved it. It also was not just British history, it was as much around the world as it could be. And I found that fascinating because so often you just hear about the royalty of England. And this one did not focus on that. It focused on women across the world in that time window and what life was like for them or what they accomplished in their life. No one was more favoritized than the other. By that, I mean Queen Elizabeth was in there, but she didn't get 10 pages when someone else only got 1. They all got equal amounts of pages, equal amounts of attention, and it was really, really refreshing and really interesting to read for nonfiction. I really recommend it. It was also an ARC, so I don't own a copy of it physically, but that's on my list of books I would like to own one day. For May, my favorite was another biblical fiction. This is Counted with the Stars by Connilyn Cossette. I love ancient Egypt anything, and especially tied with biblical fiction. It's a love of mine. So I chose Counted with the Stars because it just was one of those that hit home and hit all the right spots. I loved the look at how people fled from Egypt. And it's an older one in terms of biblical fiction and what has been written in the last 5 years or more, but this is such a good one. I really recommend it. I think it's a genius look at this, and it's a series that I still need to finish, but I am very excited that I was able to get my toes into this world. For June, it was a retelling, which was Fairest of Heart by Karen Witemeyer. This one I so adored. It is a Snow White retelling about this woman I think her name was Penelope Snow, and she was in the Western era historical fiction where she is the assistant to this actress and things go poorly. She comes across this man who is actually, I think he was a Texas Ranger, and he helps save her. I don't remember all the specific details, but I'm pretty close, so I might be a little bit wrong with his job description or something. Anyways, she comes in contact with these like 7 grumpy old men. Not all of them are grumpy, but they all are like the 7 dwarves. It's just so good. I really loved this retelling and I can't wait for more. I love Karen Witmeyer's writing and the fact that she's doing a retelling series and the first one started off like that. I'm all in for whatever else she writes, honestly. For July, it was actually not Jane Austen book, which is interesting, but it was Never Say Pig by R. Bruce Macdonald. This one is about sailor superstitions. It just was so surprising to me. I picked it up because the library had a summer reading challenge thing, so I picked up some books that they recommended or had in that list, and this was one of them. I did not expect to enjoy it like I did. I was like, oh, I'll just check it off my reading list, but it was so engrossing. It was just so fascinating to read about sailor superstitions and how that impacts their life on the seas, how it impacts them, how they pick people, how different things happen on voyages or depending on the country you're from, what expectations there are. So interesting, really enjoyed it. And it was honestly my favorite of the month. And I know some people in the comments of that book or reviewing that book were like, it's just so dumb that they can't say the word pig, but they should have it tattooed on their leg. Yeah, that's the point. We don't get it, but it's awesome to have an insight into that world. So really enjoyed that. If you're at all interested in like superstitious things or even just like a new kind of book that you never thought to pick up, try Never Say Pig. And it's pig with spelled P*G because you can't say it, obviously. For August, I am going to call 2 out because I honestly can't pick between the 2 of them. So the first one was The Hem of His Garment, and I don't remember the author's name right now. I'm very sorry. This was a nonfiction about chronic pain and how we can relate to God in our chronic pain. It was so incredible. It was like, I was almost in tears from page 1. It was just so breathtaking and amazing. And honestly, if you want to know how to look at your physical ailments or emotional ailments, you know, if you have mental health struggles or if you are struggling with stress and it's creating a hard situation in your life, how to cling to his garment, this book, it described it all. And it was so interesting because it covered things like financial struggles, and it covered like emotional struggles, health struggles, physical or traumatic stress, different kinds of things. It really covered a lot about how we can cling to God in those moments, and it was amazing. So I definitely recommend that. I've been on the lookout to buy it. Haven't found a copy yet, but I will soon. The other one that I read was Summer in the Spotlight by Liz Johnson. This was like so perfect. It's about PEI, about these 3 brothers on PEI, and this one was about the 3rd brother, Levi, who is quite quiet. He can talk, he just chooses not to. He's a massive literature fan. He reads everything, and basically he's got a crush on this teacher at the school where he's a janitor, and she's about to lose her job as a drama teacher. So he, along with her, put together this performance where he's doing the set design, but he knows a bit of Oscar Wilde, which is just so good. I loved this one so much. This is like a love letter to literature. It's a love letter to PEI. It's just so good. You really should read this. And this is the 3rd book in a series. I recommend all of the books in the series, but this is by far my favorite of the 3. I just love I love Liz Johnson's writing, and I am excited to always pick up more. For September, I have, I guess, a favorite author because the first book that I read by this author made me instantly pick up another one and adore her even more. So this is Toni Shiloh. The first one I read was You Make It Feel Like Christmas. This was about, I think her name was Angel, who came back home for Christmas and Thanksgiving. She just lost her job, so she's trying to figure out what to do, but no one knows that yet. And she meets her older brother's friend, and a romance begins. It is just such a great Christmas story. I loved how nothing was overly rushed, how everything was really organic, and it flowed very well. It was great. The other one was In Search of a Prince, and that one was about this girl, Bree, who finds out that her father was actually an African prince, and now that he's passed away, she is due to inherit the kingdom when her grandfather dies. And how she goes, it's Princess Diaries in Africa. It was beautiful. I loved it, and I was so happy with it. Honestly, those are the kind of books that are just so melting, like they melt your heart, and they're just so wonderful while holding actual like important conversations. I really enjoyed it. October's favorite was The Lost Boys of the Barlowe Theater, which is by Jaime Jo Wright. This one, it was just a classic Jaime Jo Wright. It was so good. It was like a ghost town or a ghost story surrounding this theater. And basically in the modern time, they're trying to figure out what happened, because while they're there with a TV crew and all that, one of the people goes missing. And it's a big thing of where is it? Like, how does this relate to the mystery several decades earlier where these boys got lost in the theater and were not found? And it says that they haunt the theater. So good. I always enjoy Jaime Jo Wright, and this one lived up to all my expectations. It was perfection. November's favorite was God Save Benedict Arnold by Jack Kelly. This is because I have never read about Benedict Arnold and I knew nothing, but the book was so well done, and as soon as I started, I couldn't put it down. That's the sign of a good book for me, and it was one of those. I flew through it. I learned so much about the Revolutionary War, but also about Benedict Arnold, his relationship with George Washington, how he got married a couple times, the different situations that happened. I was enthralled and I could not stop reading. This was such a great book, and as someone who's Canadian and doesn't know American history very well, it was a wonderful overview, but at the same time, it was a wonderful way to learn about a man who is villainized in history, and for good reason, but to learn about him as a human first and then the villainy that followed. So I found it to be really interesting. The final book for December was Five Little Pigs by Agatha Christie. I discovered in December, I think I only read one new book to me, which is kind of a shock. But this is better than that one. So I'm going to go with this one. Five Little Pigs has gotten better and better on my reads. So my most recent read was The Best of All, and I so enjoyed it. I love this reflection story of Poirot going back and trying to figure out what happened 16 years before, 15 years before, and how that impacts current day. I think it's just such a great story of Poirot and of a mystery being solved in the past, but does it really make an impact on the day, and who's impacted by it? It's just such a great one, and I really enjoyed it. So those are my favorites for 2023. I know there's a few more than 12, but I just really couldn't help myself, so I'm sorry. But please let me know. What are some of your favorite books that you read in 2023? Or if you're going to pick up any of these now, I'd love to know. There's nothing better than sharing good books, right? Anyways, I'll see you next time. If you would like to click subscribe if you are new here, that'd be awesome. And if you'd like to hit that like button if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you for my next video. Bye for now.
In a house that I don't know,